Yeah, g'day. This video is about magazine couplers. I have joined together two magazines for my airsoft rifle. Just a temporary measure at the moment, with rubber bands holding them together and some strips of rubber in between to keep them at a decent separation so that they won't foul up against the side of the gun. It's only a temporary measure because the rubber bands are not particularly resilient or long lasting. They will eventually break and I'll have to replace them. A much more durable and workable solution would be something like these polymer magazine couplers, such as are made by CAA or MFT. Unfortunately, there are none available here in New Zealand through any of our outlets. I've looked online and most of the places seem to be either out of stock or don't send to New Zealand. Those who do have stock and do send to New Zealand, the postage from the USA to New Zealand is prohibitively expensive. And by prohibitively expensive, I mean $43 to $57 US to post something that costs $19 US. Or $14 US depending on where you buy from. So I decided, what the hell, I'll make my own. So I ordered from a local company a block of black acetal. It's 21.5 millimeters thick, and this is 80 mils square on each side. And my plan is to cut it down and file into it the shapes that I require to make my own pair of magazine couplers. This is the plan that I drew up for the cutting and shaping of the plastic to make the pieces that I require. Right, the first step was to cut the block of plastic into roughly halves. Didn't have to be perfectly accurate. Then I used an edge scriber and set the depth marks, if I can just get it angled slightly there, by running this along the top face of the thing and marking both edges. Did the same with the other one. Then, using my grandfather's trusty square, I was then able to measure and mark the face of each piece. So we now wind up with a diagram of where to cut out, and we cut down to the appropriate marks on the edge. For that I'll be using a miter box with a tenon saw to give a good vertical cut down, and we'll wind up with the grooves being cut into the face and running all the way across here, which will mean we'll wind up with two grooved blocks about this wide, which I'll then render down into narrower ones. So we've got the pieces cut and shaped now. I used a miter box and tenon saw to cut down to the line, and then just used a normal wood chisel to chisel out the grooves. When using a wood chisel on anything, especially acetal, make sure you wear safety goggles. Hey, it worked. And the other piece here, finished that one up with a rasp and file to smooth it down a bit better. Couldn't get a file into that one. And then I just adjusted them to make sure that they fitted properly onto the magazines. In fact, they fit so snugly on the magazine that the two pieces hold it together quite nicely as it is. However, I'm going to be cutting them down to 2 pairs. Today I bought a couple of 3/16 inch coach bolts, 3 inches long, and a couple of nylock nuts to go with them, and they will be the joining bolts for my 2 clamps when they're put together. And here we have 2 of the 4 pieces cut down to the correct width of 16mm. I cut the pieces to width using the tenon saw and miter box. In order to get the precise measurements I required, I placed the saw in the miter box and got a block of wood which I then positioned exactly 16mm away from the edge of the saw blade. I then anchored that in place. Well, okay, I nailed it directly to the workshop bench through a cutout in the miter box. With that wood in place, I was then able to push the acetyl plastic block up against it and drop the saw exactly where I wanted it to be to cut them into 16mm wide pieces. I then drilled a hole through each of the 4 blocks through which the bolt is going to pass, and on the other side I rather aggressively countersunk it. That's a 12mm hole. I was going to use just a 12mm drill to drop down and make more of a flat base in there, but unfortunately I couldn't get the 12mm drill into the drill press, so I used a countersink attachment. It's been very aggressively countersunk. I can get most of my little fingertip in there, so when the plastic bolt goes through, it's recessed so far you can scarcely see it in there. Then the 2 pieces go together like this, and with a washer and nylock nut we have the finished clamp. And now you see them fitted onto the magazines, holding them in place just like the commercially available ones. Well, not quite. I think these are a little bit more over-engineered. Definitely look bulkier than the illustrations I've seen of the commercial ones. But they certainly serve the purpose. They hold it rock solid. Got the suitable gap between the 2, offset, quite happily locks in place. And certainly a lot more robust than a couple of pieces of rubber and a handful of rubber bands. Also looks a lot better than a couple of pieces of rubber and a handful of rubber bands. Now the recessed holes not only are large enough for the half round coach bolt heads, but they're also big enough for the 5/16 socket used to tighten up the nylock nuts that are on there, and they can remain recessed out of the way as well. Altogether, the plastic bolts and nylock nuts cost me $22.11. That's New Zealand currency, which is around about $18.50 in US dollars at the moment, which puts the price of my homemade clamps at around the same price to purchase the commercial ones, but I've saved myself anywhere between 43 and 57 US dollars worth of postage, and also I've had hours of fun putting them together, and the satisfaction now that it's completed of having done something that works, is nice and functional, and it's 100% mine. To quote GLaDOS, this was a triumph. I'm making a note here, huge success. I hope you've all enjoyed the video and found it instructional, and have fun with your sport. Have a good night.